introduction, and thank you all for coming. This is a real delight for me to come, to visit. I especially enjoy coming and talking to young people. And if you're not real young, just so you're young with ideas, that's what counts. So no, it is a real delight to be here. You know, there was a little bit of concern over the weekend on what would happen this evening, because we were scheduled to be off this entire week. And there was this bill, a little old bill came up on the weekend. And, they said, well, we're going to vote on Saturday, but if we don't get it done, we're going to finish it up on Monday. And I got to think, oh my goodness, not only do I have to sit around here voting for this, against this disastrous bill, it might mess up the evening, but it worked out. Not to your benefit, though, because I guess you heard that the bill did pass the House on Saturday. But you know, that I would consider not the most exciting news. But you know, during the week last week, there was a bill that came to the floor. It was totally unnoticed. It will not be in the news. And it'll be something that I wanted to mention just to give you something to think about. Because it's one of those bills that I voted against. And I voted against it all by myself. I've done that a couple times. But the bill had to do, it was a wonderful statement on the description on the desk of what this bill was, a resolution. It was celebrating and praising the end of the Cold War and coming down of the Berlin Wall. I happen to think that coming down of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War was probably one of the greatest events of the 20th century. But the rest of it said that we are restating the principle of NATO that specifically says that we are committed to defend Europe by treaty. And I don't like that, because I don't think we should ever go any place in the world with troops unless the Congress deliberately votes for and declares war and sends their troops over under those circumstances. In addition, it endorsed the whole idea of expanding NATO. Now, if we would have really had the end of the Cold War, we would have disbanded NATO. I mean, what do we need NATO for now? Now we're gathering up all the Eastern European nations together. We're going up and pressing right up to the borders of Russia, which is not exactly the kind of thing they enjoy. It would be sort of like if they had won the Cold War and they would have come over and put the Eastern Bloc nations in Mexico and Canada. We wouldn't have liked it. It has no real purpose to it. But it was restating, expanding NATO, and whatever. But I'm sure that, matter of fact, I talked to a few members when I was sitting on the House floor, and they said, why are you voting against this? And I just happened to have a copy of the resolution. I took this out, and I was showing it to them, to one individual, and I was quoting this. He says, where do you get this stuff? And I said, well, this is the bill. I was reading from the bill, because he sort of endorsed the idea. I didn't like it, but there's just one or two or three. They're not all that courageous, but, you know, making a statement. But anyway, that's to me very important in deciding what kind of a foreign policy you want. If you want an interventionist foreign policy, that's fine and dandy. You might like that. But I don't happen to like intervention. I like the idea that we have strong national defense. We defend this country. If we have to go to war, we declare a war, we get it over with and come home and not have perpetual wars after this. Last week with regards to foreign policy, and that was the announcement that was made that there would be no alcohol in the green zone. Everybody knows what the green zone is. That's our fortress, and that's where our military live high on the hog, and that's where they have tennis courts and swimming pools and alcohol. And the Muslims who now are starting to feel like maybe they'll have something to say about their country. They said, no more alcohol in the green zone. And one of our officers said, well, it looks like we might as well go home. That's not likely to happen. I imagine they'll try to figure out how to bootleg or something like that, because they're not going to go over there and have billion-dollar embassies and whatever and not have the alcohol. It's just to me a bit of hypocrisy. You know, tonight I want to talk about an issue of tolerance. I call it the politics of tolerance. And that can be a tricky subject because I think everybody wants to be tolerant, but how far does that go? Should we be tolerant of people who are intolerant to us when we haven't done anything? So it does raise a lot of questions. But there are some basic principles of a free society which are based on tolerance. Because the whole idea of having limited government and personal responsibility means that you and others, everybody have a right to their life, and they have a right to their liberty, and they should have a right to keep everything they earn. But this means that other people might not spend their money the way you think they should. You might think, well, they have enough, they have too much, and they keep spending it on their own things that they want, and they save their money, and they do various things, and the world is unfair. So we have to make the world fair. So we'll do that by telling you that you don't have a right to your income, and therefore we will make a better world by the use of force. We will use government, guns and threats and intimidation and putting you in jail and all these things. If you don't pay up so that we have equal distribution of all this, that's the basis of this medical bill, and that is to take one group to give to another. But they call it free, of course. Of course, you know, there is no such thing as anything really coming free, especially from the government. What has the government ever produced? The government can only take from one group and give to another. But if you look at a society that's based on liberty, the economic policy would be that taxes would be very, very minimal and wouldn't be on income. You'd have to collect it some other way, which means we would be repealing the 16th Amendment and we wouldn't have any income tax at all. Then there wouldn't be any intervention in the marketplace. The use of force and regulations is always said to be to make it fair, to help make sure that nobody's mistreated. But at the same time, once the government and we allow the government to have this principle that they can regulate, then the game is on. Who's going to control the regulators? That invites the lobbyists to Washington. But the regulations are always designed to help the poor people, of course. But it's the wealthy people, it's the corporations who are able to get the strings of power, and then they write the regulations to their benefit. Do you think that on this health care bill, which is supposed to be helping all the poor people, wonder why the corporations haven't, they're coming out all right. The stock markets and the drug companies went up today because they have control. When the Republicans were in charge, they had prescription health program. That was their conservative program. That was pushed by the drug companies. The drug companies spent an unbelievable amount of money on lobbying for that bill. But in medical care, you have all kinds of corporations. You have the drug companies, the insurance companies, health management companies, the hospital, and the AMA. They're always lobbying for special interests. But it's always said that it's designed to help the little people, like our housing programs. We have this inflationary system. We create credit miraculously out of thin air, and there's great prosperity, and people can buy a house for $100,000, and they can go up to $200,000, and they can keep borrowing. It's like a piggy bank. It's just wonderful. But it still isn't perfect. So others come along and say, look, the banks aren't loaning enough. They're only loaning to people who qualify for loans. We want you to give the money to people who don't qualify. So they do that always to help the poor people. But the builders benefits, the mortgage companies benefits, the banks benefit, and it goes on until the predictable crash comes, and guess what happens?